So go ahead and please tell us your name.
My name is William Siegel, but I go by Bill. Bill Siegel.
Tell me something terrific and wonderful about turning 60.
Well, on a serious note, terrific and wonderful, I guess, would mean that there's a lot of people that don't get to turn 60. If you go by actuarial rates, of course, most of us that live past 15 or 20 all make it to 60, but some people don't, and I've known people that have died. The other terrific thing, I think, is not as much stress, internal stress. I think we realize we are what we are, and we don't put on as much pretense as we once did. We accept our failures, and I guess that we're more adaptable.
What comes to mind when you hear the word old?
Grand Canyon, I mean, the universe, that's kind of generalized, I suppose. 4.65 billion years. As far as our lifespan, old, I think, starts probably in your 50s. As far as physical breakdown, physical not being able to do what you were once able to do physically, especially if you might, let's say if some guy was an athlete. I think it's tougher on women. I think women go the extra mile to look younger, although I think men are just as vain, including myself. I guess it's cliche. I think old is how you feel, but in my case, I felt old for a long time, I think. Well, probably 10 years since I was about 50. So if we're putting it in life terms, old would be the last 1/3 of your life, if your life expectancy is, say, 85 years. But it's a good thing. Getting old is a good thing if your health holds out, naturally.
Are you afraid of turning 60? I mean, compared to turning 50, what do you think the difference is?
I ate a lot more ice cream when I turned 50. I used to love ice cream. I still do. I just don't abuse it like I did. I mean, is it okay to... there was times when I was 50 and I was thinner, I'd come home and I'd sit back with a quart of ice cream. Now I can't do that. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
The question was when you're turning 60 in a few months.
Right.
When you turn 50, what do you think the difference? Did you feel horrible when you turned 50?
No.
Are you going to feel horrible when you turn 60?
Not at all.
Okay.
I have to say, it's funny you should mention that. Most people have a canned answer to that. And for me, I've heard a lot of people answer questions comparable to that. Might be 30 to 40, whatever, the difference. I was more energetic, okay, mentally. I could do numbers in my head. I work with statistics and accounting and all that stuff. And I was a quicker thinker. Right now, I'm competent, but I just cannot do things as quickly as I used to. And I've heard a lot of men say, well, that's the difference between turning 70 versus 60. So I hope it's not an omen for me for the future.
How have your hopes and dreams and expectations changed over the decades?
I think I touched on that initially. I haven't been a failure, and I think my expectations were greater. I thought I would be more excited about life and work as I got older. I was never idealistic from the start, even in college. I feel like 50% of the time I've gone with the flow. And if you just picture, I always picture an old newsreel of like Manhattan from the 1930s with a Gershwin, Rhapsody in Blue playing or something. People going about their business, just very anonymous. I just feel very much like that. I've just gone along. I've worked. I guess you could say I've been a working stiff in a way, or a stuffed shirt. I developed my own personality, of course, but overall, it's just my expectations or how they've changed. I've learned to accept a lot of things that I didn't think I'd be able to live with at a younger age. Yeah. Yeah. If you were to tell me when I was 30, certain things would happen when I was older, or maybe 25, whether it be my family or in business or money, I would wonder, will I be able to, would I be able to live with that? Something like, you know.
What do you think success means to you at this age?
Being able to relax. That's it. I mean, naturally, a means to being able to relax is being financially independent. Well, a lot of people are borderline. They can quit working, they can retire, and they got to watch the bottom line. That's where I feel like I'm at. I've invested wisely, and I've always been careful with money. And if I could sit down, relax, and not worry about a mortgage, not worry about the municipal bond market or the stock market or the Canadian dollar, whatever you want to say, that's success to me. Success is that my two children, I've got a child that's in Chicago and I've got one that's in New York, that they're okay. They're okay and they're happy. In fact, that's probably the number one thing. Next to my wife, naturally, of course, my wife too, which is easier to monitor because I live with her. My two children, who grew up in this house, they've gone their own way. Kind of went off track a little, didn't I?
You're doing just fine.
Yeah.
You're doing just fine. Some people have said that reaching this milestone is kind of a wake-up call to do more, live more, that bucket list thing.
Bucket list.
How do you think about that? Tell me what you think about that.
Well, I don't like new words. I never have. And I don't know why they call it a bucket list. In fact, do you know why? I'm sorry, this is an interview for me. I don't really have a bucket list per se. That would get into a whole nother, a whole different part of my personality. Most of the things I've wanted to do, I've tried. And I still do. But as far as going and see that, whatever, we could say the 7 wonders of the world, or skydiving, or bungee jumping, those kind of things, I'd rather not do that. I get a lot of peace and satisfaction with a good book or movie that was filmed before 1976, I'd have to say. That's my cutoff. I watch Turner Classic Movies. Especially love that film de noir. And the early talkies from the early 30s, okay, we'll stop there. I'm kind of going off on a tangent.
No, those are good things. What about a spiritual bucket list?
Spiritual? Very spiritual. I'm very spiritual. Now, define spiritual. And if you're to draw a line between spirit and religion, I was brought up as a Jew, and I still consider myself a Jew. But I like to read about Hindus and et cetera, but I don't think that's your question. How do I feel? Are you asking like how I see myself as I get older and die? Like, many minds, many masters comes to thought. when you
Many
say
minds,
something.
many
Or is it
masters.
many masters, many minds? This book I read about how it wasn't about reincarnation per se, and it was written by a Yale or Harvard psychiatrist who interviewed under hypnotism different people that actually he's convinced lived previous lives. That sometime in the future, it could be 10,000 years, 5,000 years, I don't know, that certain molecules come together and form a certain part of somebody's brain, not necessarily your lineage, that will have the memories of somebody else. I just explained that very poorly. I was hoping you had read the book. It's an old book. I read it a long time ago, but it always comes to mind when somebody talks about spirit. I've gone places. I went to Cabo San Lucas, in fact, last year with my wife. We had a great time. And I realized I could relax just as much around here. For many years, I've gone to northern Ontario fishing. It's very nice. I mean, it's just... We went to an area one time where the Ojibwa Indians had left their carvings on rock ledges from 500-600 years ago. And it was signifying they'd have a outline of a rabbit or a fox, a moose, and the order that they were drawn in would tell others how good the game was downstream. It was usually in a chain of lakes area. Amazing stuff like that mesmerizes me. See, I could go somewhere like that, not fish all day. I get goofy after 4 or 5 hours on a boat. Fish for 4 or 5 hours and just sit around or hike. I mean, I like those kinds of things. I like nature. And, nature, I mean, I could go to the Himalayas, I suppose, or I could go to Nepal and go to a base camp somewhere on Mount Everest, as long as it wasn't too high up. But a lot of these things, in my opinion, I'm kind of jaded. A lot of older men have to show this maybe this machoism from going on and you know, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Everything's got to be some type of feat. But I don't see myself doing that. I've got hobbies I'll continue, but I don't think I'm going to go fly an F-14 or something like that.
Not your thing?
No. Maybe a Piper Cub, but yeah.
I went for a ride on my 50th birthday in a P-151, is that what it is? 151?
A P-51?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
warplane?
All right,
Sure.
North American P. That was a great escort plane to help us win the war. You went on one of those?
Terrifying. My friends own one. Terrifying. White as a sheet.
Did
so
you?
I don't need to do that.
Did you go over 300 miles an hour in it?
Probably. Didn't like it.
Did you do any barrel rolls?
Yes.
You did.
And I kept my eyes open. He said, "Don't keep your eyes open." So then when it was, I think don't close your eyes.
It's
So I closed my
inverted.
eyes, and when I returned right side up, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, those are neat planes. I love to see those from the ground.
Exactly.
But
That was
I
my
don't
thought
know.
when I,
Did you have a
jumped.
parachute? No.
I'm assuming there was.
No. The trouble with those planes, they're great. They're beautiful engines and planes, but the glide ratio isn't exactly great if you have a flame out. Somebody asked if I'd like to do that. I said, no, that's all right.
So, do you have any goals or achievements, accomplishments that you feel are yet left to
Yeah,
do?
yeah. I kind of have a young to. I would kind of like to audit classes at UWM. I thought one time, boy, it'd be neat to get a master's degree in economics. But I don't think I could do that now. I don't think I could do a thesis, and there's so much more involved with computers. I like reading, and yeah, I like reading regular novels. Well, I just finished an excellent book, The Art of Fielding. Terrific. But anyway, I like reading academic stuff too.
When you hear the word retire, what comes to mind? Did I already ask you that?
No, I don't think you said retire. You asked, no, you didn't ask that because I know right away nothing flashes into mind. Retire is an older word, is a word we use back, I think, especially when private pensions were more prevalent and public pensions were in the black. Retirement was a day I think men and women looked forward to and started a different life. Even at a time when psychologists and everything that you read in magazines said what to do before you retire, make sure you blah, blah, blah. Then they have stuff about retiring, take a practice run at retiring. I don't know, you're crazy, this stuff. You read about it all the time. Retiring is retiring. You either get too old to work, they don't need you anymore because you're too old, or you're too worn down. You know, let's say you're an iron worker or a construction man. Retiring is retiring from what you did to make a living and raise a family. This sounds very, I guess, apple pie American, but I can't think of anything else. And it should be a time when you have some peace of mind. And it should be a time when hopefully you have some health. You know, and if you don't have health, really good health, enough to enjoy it, you have medication to take to at least make yourself feel a little bit better. Whatever, you know. What comes to mind with retirement? Something people look forward to and a lot of people are disappointed with. I know that. I know disappointed. Oh, sure.
When they retire, they're disappointed?
Yes.
How so?
Well, my father, I'll take my father for instance. My father worked his whole life, very hard, mind you. And he retired because he was able to, he was successful. And he lost that challenge. He lost being in control and being a boss. I think it made him very unhappy in one sense. He needed that. That's one reason why a lot of people don't want to retire, which is actually a good reason. I mean, at least production's a good, if a person stays productive, at least in their minds and in another perspective, they feel like they're contributing, if you will.
Do you think it's harder for men to retire because they are more, their identity is tied to their job versus women? Or is that an older...
It's older, but it's evolved to the point where, I don't know, because I don't read much. Like I said, I try to stay away from most of articles in Cosmopolitan or any of those. Is it, if you could repeat the question, is it harder for men because normally they were the breadwinners? Or is it...
And maybe I'm thinking of, 20, 30, 40 years ago when, well, I don't know, but I know some men now who've retired and they seem to have a hard time with it because their job is their identity. That's
what you asked. Instead, right away. Unfortunately, I guess I'm having trouble focusing. The age-old question, is your job your identity? I guess yes. While you're working that job, it is. And what do you say to the guy that goes from one job to another? Mind you, not a transient, but a jack of all trades. Well, then I guess he's a jack of all trades, and that's his identity, right? I have to refer to myself, my identity at work. Okay, I was principal of a company. I sold out. Now I'm just a worker. But my identity there, I like seeing faces. I like a lot of kids work for us, good kids. We offer a lot of benefits. I like to talk and see how things are going. That's what I would miss. My identity, business is business. I never got excited about talking about business outside of the shop, so to speak. A lot of people, I suppose if you're in a more of a glamorous type of endeavor, vocation, maybe something like what you do, you go somewhere and you can talk about it. But some things aren't, you know. I had an uncle, Sal, was in the carpet business. That means he would talk about the carpet business, and he'd argue about the carpet business. People thought he was completely nuts, and he was. It turned out he was demented, but it was at a very old age. He never got the carpet business out of his mind. He lived to be in his late 80s. This was like when I was a kid. He was a great uncle, but yeah, he should have never left the carpet business. Yeah, may he rest in peace. Shalom. You're not going to ask me anymore because I'm not answering the question. I'm sorry, go on.
If you could give younger people advice on turning 60, what do you think you would say to them?
It's a difficult question because when you say, if I could give younger people, then when I think of younger people, I think people in their 30s. And I wouldn't give them advice turning 60 at that age because they got 25, 30 years to go. I think more, and I don't mean to twist your question, and I apologize if I am. I give younger people, what I tell them is not worry themselves to death. Not make money, well, that's a difficult thing to say. You know, if you got a family and you have to make a buck. Try to put things in perspective. Leave your worries at work. Don't get to the point where you have to go home and take a Xanax to unwind. I tell them, give up cigarettes if you're smoking. I quit way too late, but I quit. And try to keep your health. You'll have more energy when you turn 60. And there's a lot to be said for that. Try to get 30 minutes of exercise, not going to a gym and pumping iron. All you have to really do is walk 30 minutes a day. Stuff like that. That's the advice I would give.
Should they fear turning 60? Should they be afraid of it?
No. I think I think I mentioned before, they should be happy that they lived to 60. And if they really want to put it in perspective, look at old actuarial rates from turn of the 20th century, not the last century. We're in 2015. 1890s, 1900. You know, what the age, how old man lived if he made it past puberty, men and women. It's a lot shorter than it is now. You know, we take it for granted. I take it for granted. We all expect to live to be 84, 85 years old. In that short 115 years, we've expanded our lifespan through medicine, you know, technology, etc. You know, they should be grateful for that. I think of that, I am, as I slowly go off the topic again.
Sorry.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons I'm retiring. Yeah.
Well, that's right, you are retiring.
I'm retiring this winter, yeah. In fact, when I got on the phone and I was talking to a merchant processing company trying to get it online, I ended up talking to someone for half an hour about the difference of the weather in, I think it was Louisville, Kentucky, or Lexington, Kentucky, and Milwaukee, and I had forgotten why I called her. And she must have been just about as much out of it as I was, or not paying attention, because she forgot it was her duty to give me have a PIN number sent to me, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. But if the company's audited, I'll have been retired. But things are in good shape. I know that. Things are in good shape. Yeah, if my wife was here right now, you know, she would be standing right over there going like this, trying like waving you off, stop. So I'm going to leave my sentences to less than 20 words from now on. You'll see, I'll remember that.
I'm sorry, you're just very funny.
Laugh a minute. That's my Jimmy Durante. That's sometimes if I am funny, I know you guys have to laugh to keep me amused. When you used to come out and say, I got 1,000,000 of them. Yeah, it wasn't funny. But in retrospect, when you looked at people that laughed at stuff like Sid Caesar, your show of shows,
Right.
if you look at it now, it's a lot of it is just not funny. But the fact that people just thought it was so hilarious back then, you think it's funny. In fact, then you know it's funny.
So the perception is that it wasn't really funny, but the perception, because the laugh track, or wasn't even a laugh track back
No, a
then.
lot of
Real
that
stuff.
was, what an interesting era. But that's a
Yeah.
horse of another color, yeah.
Again, you digress.
And I just went, that was 42 words, I think, yeah.
Yeah, were you talking that was like 50 words?
Yeah.
So after living on the planet all this time, has your philosophy of life changed, and how so?
My philosophy's changed in that people have been saying it for years, and being younger, I don't think people buy into it, but you really get what you give. Or it's like, was it Paul McCartney, and in the end, the love you get is equal to the love you give. That makes a lot of sense to me. Benny Hill did a take on that too. I won't go into it. It was hilarious. And that's what it's all about. Especially a lot of people, probably including myself that I grew up with, that were some were spoiled, some were not. And they're always expected somebody to take care of them, something like that. And you have to give. You have to make another person smile. You have to show that you care for them. You have to do as we say, I guess. Not that I'm a really religious guy, but I am in my own way. You do mitzvahs. And even as a younger man, with one thing I did learn, you're asking how my philosophy changed. That's been the one constant. Always try to do something nice for somebody, and I always tell people I try to do 2 or 3 things a week out of the ordinary that's going to help somebody. But my philosophy as far as human nature hasn't changed much. I think I pretty much learned how people are by the time I was in my first job. So it hasn't really changed much. 117 words. So.
Do you think passions are important for us older people?
Passions.
Passions, we should be involved in things and have things we love to do, and, or should we just be sitting around on our butts and doing nothing?
If that makes you feel good, as it said, yeah. But person gets bored doing that. You can't have too much passion, or else too much passion is a sickness. But you don't mean to that extent. A passion, some people like Meals on Wheels, volunteer, stuff like that. People have a real passion to help people. And passion comes naturally. You either have it or you don't, I think. You can try to work yourself into a passion and think that you have passion for something, but it comes from the heart. And I think your average person that has passion for different endeavors, be they work or not, naturally those passions will wax and wane. I mean, they ebb and flow, I should say. But it's important, yes, you got to have something to live for to get out of bed, and there's people that don't. And there's a lot of suicide. That was a strong statement, way to end it, but that's what happens when people just give up.
So passions are a good thing in that it keeps our brains active and can also connect us with other people, which is also hugely important, I think.
Once you become a hermit, unless you do it intentionally, but I don't know if, you go up to the mountains with a donkey to look for gold. Well, that's one thing, but to stay there for 10 years, people have done it. I've always wondered how they stayed alive. I don't know how many cases there are actually, but it's at least something you see in the old movies.
Are you a solitude kind of a guy, or do you have a balance between solitude and
Yes, definitely.
friends?
Yes, 2 words I can answer. I do. I have some of the same friends I had since I was in grammar school, and I don't like going out that much, and I don't like that much excitement. I don't know.
Do you think that's an age thing?
It's an age thing, I suppose. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. It's a mellowing out, I suppose.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, no. But I have an ex-business partner who I still work with, and he goes like he's 35 or 40. Dinner, concerts all the time. And then another person that you met, actually, I believe on your tour, I'm interviewing people, concerts. I like going to concerts once in Blue Moon, but I haven't gone to many in the last 25 years. Like to listen to it. I'd rather listen to the music. Yeah. In the comfort of my living room.
So what makes you happy?
Being able to relax. I'm a pretty uptight guy. Work always made me uptight, and we're talking the difference between 50 and 60 before I went off on a severe tangent. And I think I get triggered easier now than I used to. Trigger, that's another new one. There's some things that I just have a hard time coping with, and it has to do with work, mistakes, some things that are done incorrectly time and time again, and thinking, well, we can change this, and they don't get changed. And it's the perfectionist in me. I'm not completely perfectionist, but part of me is, and that's that.
In thinking of the end of your life, what would your perspectives perhaps have changed over the years?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that? Death and dying. Do you think about death?
Well, yes, naturally. Yes. Thinking, yeah, I know that. I say this with a straight face. I'd like to die in bed with a quart of vanilla ice cream. But I don't think that'll happen. That doesn't sound good. My wife was here. My goodness. I think it's just, I have to look at the canned answer that you always hear. It's a part of living. It's not a part of living. It's dying. Or I can take the Woody Allen take on it, which is probably the best, most well-known. I'm not afraid of dying, but I just don't want to be there when it happens. If I can live my 70, honest to goodness, and I say that now, that'll be 70. For these are the years given, whatever, you know how they've said in the Old Testament, I believe it is. I think I'd take 70 now, because I got, some family history on one side, and the other side lives longer. But of course, like my grandmother always said, well, once you're 70, you want to live to 80. And you want to keep going. Yeah. The main reason I want to live and I think of death and dying is I'm fascinated with history. I want to know what's going to happen in 10 years, very badly. I think there's a lot of change right now, which You're smart enough not to ask like what, because you know I'll go off on a tangent. will put me on to Jupiter in three hours. There's going to be a lot of things happening. Things evolve quicker and quicker. Life is getting quicker and quicker. Not for the better. That's not my style. But I oftentimes think of my uncle. He died at 62. He died a few months before 9/11. Okay? And I'm not saying I want to live to see another catastrophe. I'd like to live and see just how things go. Mankind, what's developed, what's invented, okay? Is there going to be drugs that'll make us live to be 120? Or is that going to be a good thing? You know, how government's going to change, how this country's going to change. I'm very much afraid that if I don't live long enough, my curiosity won't be sated. And I truly feel that way.
I've always felt when loved ones passed away, like my grandparents and my father, I just felt sad that they weren't going to see what was going to happen next, that they're going to miss things.
That's exactly what I think. Do you think everybody thinks that way? I'm serious. I'm not trying to be a funny man here.
I would hope so. Do you?
Most people, younger people especially, don't feel those milestones. Maybe it's because we talk about generations when people grew up. You know, the guy that was born in the mid-late 20s, grew up, was very cognizant of life during the Depression. Next thing you know, he's drafted and he's in World War II. God forbid, he might have died or he might have made it through. If he made it through, he prospered. At least more than likely he did. People our age I recall, not the Cuban Missile Crises per se, but I remember those damn fallout signs. And my grandpa pointing them out to me, saying, "You go," because I remember taking a walk with him, saying, "This is where you go for fallout shelter." And then the drills at school, going into the boiler room. And then, of course, John Kennedy, and then Bobby, and then Martin Luther King getting shot. All these milestones that seem to... I think to myself, do people 20 or 30 now, they've got 9/11. How life evolves for them compared to how life evolved for us. To me, it's like night and day. But then I think I'm being a little bit, not selfish, but just thinking, okay, just my generation, people born in the mid-late 20s that went through the Depression, the war, and then prospered in America. Their parents, you know, okay, so they went through their milestones. I don't think the younger generation is cognizant as much as my generation is or was. And the sad thing about that is I think my generation was kind of apathetic. I still think we are. Not as much now that we're older, but yeah. There's 230 words that made no sense at all.
No, it's so interesting.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Well, it is.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude.
You're fine. No, it was interesting. As you were talking, I'm thinking, are we less apathetic now that it's behind us? The Kennedys and the missile crisis,
It was more sensational.
Yeah.
Because of the media today, everything being sensationalized, you're not 100% what's really important. You're not 100% sure. We know these horrible killings that we hear about in shootouts, mass killings as they're called, are horrible, and the media thrives on those. Naturally, that's their job. I hate to think that kids are going to think of those as certain landmarks in their milestones in their life. You know, of course, what I mentioned about, you know, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and John Kennedy being shot, well, those were horrible things too. And here that's how I think of milestones in my life, not to mention Cuba, fallout shelters and the hiding under a desk if there's a nuclear attack. You know, the kids today, they have 9/11. It's on a larger scale. It's different. Kids grow up quickly. You know, they grow up quickly and things are thrown in their face, and it's...
Because there's more media advances.
It's more media and social media especially, right? And I think they're a little more narcissistic. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I can keep talking. I would go right in a circle, and I'd refute what I said before. So I'm not sure.
But do you think people of our generation, when the Vietnam War was going on, not to take any political stances, but Vietnam War was obviously a milestone. It was shoved in our face every day, every night on television.
Right.
That's a milestone in a way. That's a marker of our generation. So it was in our face a lot.
Well, yeah, it was the first time, I think, that people from the age of 18 to 21 really thought they knew what was going on in the world, and they didn't. I hate to say this. It wasn't like I remember these times very well. And government had some very difficult decisions to make. And I remember McNamara came out some years ago and felt horrible, like he had made a horrible mistake during Lee Johnson's administration and all the loss of life. The Vietnam were between a rock and a hard place. We couldn't be too aggressive. You had Russian sectors, spotters that we weren't allowed to, because of that, we couldn't carpet bomb certain areas. I didn't go into a stupid military history. I don't know half of it. But I do know that was, I guess, the awakening of the generation, probably 3 or 4 years older than me, half a decade, let's say. And they're against the war. I know that my father, who's a veteran, was very much against it. But I don't think the politicians at the time, not that I trust them more at the time, whether it was Kennedy, then Johnson, then Nixon, I think that they were in a catch-22 position. I think we had to keep troops there, basically. When I hear this garbage about it was for financial gain because somebody had stock in an armaments factory, well, that's completely bullshit. I can't believe that people would believe that. That's not going to be a reason.
So going back to the generational milestone markers. You think, I guess every generation has them.
Yeah, and what I just said, like I said, I'm talking out loud and I'm thinking, well, okay, the younger people, they have 9/11. That was horrific. Our country was attacked. It was attacked. It was almost akin to us being attacked at Pearl Harbor. But maybe I'm thinking they just see it differently. I don't know. You know, they say people are people no matter if they're born in 1718 or 1950 or 1995. I will say this, younger people, especially people under 40, and I hate to really be negative about it, they're in for a hell of a time. I see a lot of problems, and it's financial, in the next 25 years. All right. So that's about oh, there's another question?
Yes, I just have one more
Okay.
question. Everything that I've asked you, we've talked about, is there anything you think I missed that you have any more thoughts on sharing about turning 60, being 60?
No. In fact, I think you ought to write the ultimate book on questions to ask people that are turning 60. Yeah, seriously. I think you've covered everything.
Think so?
I believe you have. I mean, you could ask me anything, and I'd probably start babbling. But what you asked me is, I think, the crux of what you need to ask somebody that's 60 or thereabouts. And it's interesting getting answers, you know.
Thank you.
But you can't just, the spectrum of answers. We can't really just say this person said this, that person said that. You come across a fellow like me and you're going to see, well, this person talked, but he said this and then he said that. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying. So, whatever. Yeah, good thing I'm retiring this December.
Do you have anything to add? I don't. Any questions? I have like.
Thank you.
I have like one more question.
Okay.
What's the capital of Utah?
Wait, no. Not Salt Lake City. Point. Wait. In chronology, I can name you all the presidents, and I'm having trouble with Utah. If you gave me a choice between two cities, I could answer it, but I'm not going to be able to.
Can't. You're on your own.
Nope, can't answer. Don't know.
Okay.
Can you?
Just give it a shot.
Well, I know it's not Salt Lake City
How do you know that?
because it's too obvious.
Because that's what the
It's
answer
not.
is. It's Salt
Promontory.
Lake City.
I was thinking where they drove the last spike in the Transcontinental Railroad when they met, or at least when they met for the picture.
Who?
Yeah, Promontory Point or whatever. It is Salt Lake City.
It is.
You know, I landed in Salt Lake City. The carpet in that airport was horrible.
What did it look like?
Oh, God. It was like if there was such a thing as puke green. It was
That's
in.
where the term came from? You created that carpet?
Yeah, but I remember that about the airport. But is it beautiful around there? I mean,
Utah?
yeah.
Utah's beautiful.